In the previous video, we learned how to retrieve data out of the database that's already in there. So in this video, we're going to take that to the next step, and we're going to look at inserting our own data into the database. To insert new data, we just need to type in insert into and the table that we want to insert into. So in this case, we're going to type it into the staff data table. Just for simplicity's sake as well, I'm going to spread this command across multiple lines, but whether you do or not is up to you. So the next thing that we type is values, and then in brackets we're going to type the actual values that we want to insert into the table. And just for simplicity's sake as well, I'm also going to type select into here so that when we run the command, it will automatically show us the results of the table. But before we actually run this, I'm just going to copy and paste this and run this command so that we can see the data as it is. And then if we put that back in there and run this command again, you can see that we've added this new line. So just a quick tip here as well, if you want to run multiple commands within the same query, it's important that you execute all, which is Control Shift and Enter at the same time. If you just hit Control and Enter, it will just execute the line that you're running. So that will simply refresh without actually trying to insert any more data. And of course, this same format is used for any different table that you wanted to add data into. So first off, I'm just going to show all of the data within the department table. And now you can see we've added a second cleaning office based in London. As I say, you can use the same format to insert data into any table you want. The format is just insert, into, and then the name of the table, and then the word values, and in brackets the actual values that you want to insert in the correct order. So as you can see, 90 corresponds to the department number, cleaning corresponds to department name, and London corresponds to department location. There's also a slightly more robust way to insert data. As you can see, because we've got these values without the actual headings that they correspond to, if we change the order of the columns within the table without changing anything else, our query would stop working. And so to get around that, we can actually specify the columns that we want to insert data to. And we do that just by adding the names of the columns in brackets before the word values. So in this case, we're just going to insert the department number, department name, and the department location. And I'm going to change this to 100 so that we can actually insert this new column, or row rather. As I say, I would always encourage you to use this version, which specifies the columns that you're inserting. If you wanted to, for example, not include the location of a department, you'd simply omit that data from the query. And if we run this again, it will allow us to insert that department without specifying the location. We could in fact change the order of these without changing the order of the columns, and it will still insert the data correctly for us. So that just breaks that dependency. Now of course, if you change the names of the columns, this will no longer work. You will need to also go back into all of the queries that rely on that table and change the names of the columns in there too. But it's more likely that if you're going to change the name of a column, you're also going to change how the data is stored within that column. And so if you're going to actually go to the extent of changing the name of a column, it's worth taking the time to review the data that you're inserting into it, to make sure that you actually know that you're going to be inserting valuable data. Now one small point about this as well while we're here is the fact that numbers don't go inside of quotation marks. Neither does any values which are null, true or false. Everything else goes inside quotation marks. Now one final thing that we were able to do with the select statement was manipulate multiple rows at once, and we can do this with the insert statement as well. It's just a matter of adding a comma after the first brackets, which represents the first row that we're going to add, and there's another group of brackets which represent the second row of data that we're going to add. And we can add as many new rows to the database as we want using this method. And of course we can also change this so that we don't specify the columns, in which case we need to rely on the actual format being correct. If you're going to be adding a lot of data into your database at once, it is always recommended to try to use as few insert statements as possible. You could of course use many individual insert statements, one for each record that you're trying to insert, but by grouping them together, MySQL is able to process them a lot quicker, because it doesn't need to keep going back and finding which table it is and which values go into which column.